Hello and welcome back to the DMR Bikes workshop. Today I'd like to talk to you about your DMR V8 pedals. Unlike the V12, V12 Mag and Volt pedals, the DMR V8 pedal uses a cup and cone bearing. I'd like to briefly describe to you what a cup and cone bearing actually is. A cup and cone bearing is exactly as it sounds. It consists of a cup, like this plastic cup, and is found in the pedal body itself at either end. The bearings sit in a circular pattern within the cup. On the axle there are two cones. One cone is a part of the axle at the crank end. The other cone is on a nut at the top of the axle. As you tighten down the nut, it sits into the bearings that are in the cup, tightens against them so that the bearings run freely, but the pedal is still tight. That, in essence, is what a cup and cone bearing is. Now, cup and cone bearings do need a little bit of time to bed in when they're new. So out of the box, you do need to do one thing to make sure when you fit the pedal to your bike, it runs smoothly. In the box, you will find a 2mm Allen wrench and a tube of syringe of grease. Now, the syringe of grease is full, but is not enough to completely grease both the pedals internally and all the ball bearings. What it's there for is to aid the bedding in process. You'll find at the top there is a grease port with a little grub screw. If you undo the grub screw with the 2mm Allen wrench which is provided, careful not to lose it because it is very small. Take the syringe, and remember you don't need all of the grease. Put it onto the hole and just squirt a little bit of grease in there. Replace the grub screw. Wipe off any excess that may have spilled over. Fit the pedal to your bike and then go ride. After a short period of time, the pedal will be really nice and silky smooth. And that's all the grease which we supply in the box is really there for, to aid the bedding in process. After a period of time, of course, your pedals will need to be serviced, and like any bearings, they will need some tender loving care from time to time. I'm going to take you through how to do that step by step. You need a few tools to do this. If you have a pedal spanner or a 15mm spanner, you can use this to hold the axle still. A pair of long nose pliers, 19mm wrench, a Torx wrench with a 12mm bit, a pick, a 6mm Allen wrench which you could use instead of the pedal spanner or the 15mm spanner, and finally a little tool which we have from DMR Bikes ourselves, which I'll show you how to use it later. Now, this tool is available from any DMR bike stockist. It's not very expensive, and sometimes a bike shop may have this in their toolbox and will charge you a few pounds to do this job for you. Of course, there'll be a few things which you're going to replace. Bearings, for example. These are 5 30-second balls. There's 26 in this packet, and that's enough to do one pedal. There are 13 ball bearings on each side of each pedal, so this packet will do one pedal. To do both pedals, I need 2 packets. End caps, we have these in stock. They are a replacement part if you want to. If you can get away with using the old ones, that's fine. As you remove the old ones, sometimes they can be damaged, and just from general riding, these do get a bit scuffed up, so we do have new ones of these if you want to replace those at any time. Now, to actually start servicing the pedal, first thing you need to do is to remove the end cap I just showed you. Take your pick and just prise the plastic end cap out. Like I said, this might damage it a little tiny bit. It won't be very noticeable, and if you want to put a new one in, like I said, they're quite cheap. You can get them from any DMR bike stockist. Behind there, you'll see the bolt cluster. Now, there's a nut, a washer, and the cone nut, all sandwiched together. What you need to do, first of all, is to remove the lock nut, which is at the very top. To do that, you need to hold the axle still. Now, you can use 2 tools to do this. You could use a pedal spanner or a 15mm spanner. a 6mm Allen wrench. I'm going to use a 6mm Allen wrench because it's a little bit easier rather than holding that big pedal spanner. Once you've got the axle held with the 6mm Allen wrench or the pedal spanner, take your socket and undo the little nut anti-clockwise. Once you've got it so that it's not biting anymore, you'll be able just to undo that with your fingers. The nut will come away, leave it in the socket. You can use that again in a minute. It'll be nice and safe in there so you don't lose it. Now, underneath there's a washer which separates the cone nut and the lock nut. You need to remove the washer, so you take your long nose pliers and just give it a bit of a wiggle and that will come away. Keep that somewhere safe. As you go through each step, make sure you're cleaning each part. Now you can see the cone nut. If you have the tool, the new DMR tool, this is the easiest way to remove it. Like I said, available from any DMR bike stockist. Sometimes the bike shop might have this in their toolbox. Let's undo the cone nut anti-clockwise. You're still holding this axle still with the Allen wrench or the pedal spanner or the 15mm spanner, whichever one you're using. Once it gets towards the end, you might get a little bit fiddly. So there's the cone nut. Put that to one side, clean that up. Now when you look down inside there, you'll see the bearings themselves. They're just simple loose ball bearings. And as I said, in each side there's 13 ball bearings of the size 5/32. The pedal is now open and loose, so if you drop it or put it down by accident, your ball bearings are going to go everywhere, so be very careful at this stage where you're going to actually go, because if you're going to just reuse the old ball bearings, you need to make sure that you don't lose any, because you want to make sure you have all 26, 13 on each side. Carefully remove the axle. You might find some of the ball bearings stick to it where it comes out. I'm very lucky, it hasn't, but sometimes it can. Put that to one side, give it a bit of a clean, and then you'll notice each side, the ball bearings, if they have stayed in the pedal, will be there in a circular pattern as I described. They're sitting in the cups, and as I described earlier about the cup, this is where the cups are inside the pedal body. Now on the crank side of the pedal, where the axle came out of, there is a rubber seal. If you use your pick, carefully remove the rubber seal and put that to one side. Now you can see the bearings and you'll be able to get to them without snagging them on the seal as they come out. Now if you're going to just clean them up and put them back in, no worries, or if you're going to replace them, I'd still suggest getting a bit of paper or a clean rag and putting them down, prizing them out, so you've still got them all there in case you need them. So just use a pick or a blunt screwdriver and carefully just remove the bearings. They'll be covered in grease, be it dirty or clean, and will stick to whatever you're using to prise them out as they come. There we go, so there's 13 on that side. Flip the pedal around. As you can see, it's a little bit troublesome sometimes, but there we go. They're all out. So you can clean up these bearings now if you wish. Just a little bit of degreaser. Give them a wipe with a rag. You roll them around between some rag or some bits of paper, you'll find that the grease comes away very easily. And you're left with the pedal body. The pedal body is going to be dirty, there'll be grease and dirt inside there, and you want to clean that up before you start to reassemble the pedal. So, take a rag, bit of degreaser. If you squirt the degreaser inside first, and then wipe around inside with a rag or a bit of paper, removing all the dirty grease. Like so. You might want to give it another quick spray of degreaser after you've done that, just to make sure that there's no dirt in there. Clean it all out nice and neatly. I just quickly do that to my axle as well. Get all that horrible grease off the axle, it's dirty. Now I'm going to fit new bearings, so I'm just going to remove these bearings to one side. The next step is to prepare the pedal body and the cups for the new bearings to go in. Now you need a nice thick grease. I'm going to use some wax based grease here. We tend to find that's the best, but you could use lithium based grease or something like that. But wax based grease is usually the best way to go. You can pick it up from any hardware store very cheaply in large tubs like this, or even small tubs, whatever you want to get. It's not very expensive. So it's a little bit dirty, this job. With your finger, you wear some gloves, or if you want to keep your hands nice and clean, I'm quite used to being dirty here, so just smear up the pedal. I'd like to apologise at this point for the innuendo bingo going on, but just smear it up inside so that the cup's now coated in grease. And the same on the opposite side, so that the cup has got a nice smear of grease in there. Clean my finger up a little bit. Now, the next step is to put in the new bearings. I've got my new bearings pack here. To stop them from rolling around and rolling under your bench and you're losing half of them, I suggest probably using something like this cup here so they don't fly everywhere, and I shake them out with a packet. There you go. There's all my bearings in there. Now remember, we're putting 13 on both sides of this pedal body. So I'm simply going to try and not lose any. Pop them in a circular pattern. This might take a little bit of time, so please bear with me. I do apologise for the time this takes, but it's worth getting it right. Right, so in there I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 bearings. Now, if you notice, when we've put the 13 bearings in there, there is a gap here. Now this gap won't be big enough to put another bearing in, but the gap does need to be there. So that's fine if you see that. The next thing is to replace your little O-ring. This is good because when you work on the opposite side, it will help the bearings not to fall out. It shouldn't do because the grease is going to stick them in a little bit like glue for the time being, but it can happen. Now, pop the other 13 in the opposite side. Like I'm going to go make a cup of tea whilst I do this. It's always a little bit tedious. There we go. 13 in there again, and once more a tiny little gap between the first and last bearing, not big enough to put another bearing in, but there will be a gap there. Next step is to put the axle back through. Give it a little tiny smear of the grease. You don't need much, just literally smear it. The grease sat on the bearings is the main part where it should be, and that's the most important place for the grease to be. Now you put the axle back in. Careful not to knock the bearings out. It does need to take a bit of care to do that. Like so. And there we go. Now again, this pedal is not being secured by anything apart from my finger, so make sure that you hold it there, otherwise it's going to fall apart and your bearings will go everywhere, so be a little bit careful. Next thing to do is replace the cone nut. You'll clean this up. Screw it on with your fingers as much as you can.
Oh, really well.
And then use the servicing tool. That's what you get for having grease over your fingers. And do the little cone nut up as much as you can with the tool. As I was describing before, the cone is now going through the bearings that are sat in the cup, and as the cone increases in diameter as it sandwiches down, it will clamp up on the bearings like that. And you'll find that if you hold the axle and then use your fingers just to feel that it is now biting against those bearings, you can just feel that with the 19mm spanner as well. You'll find that's now going relatively tight. Pull that tool out for a sec. You spin it with your fingers there, just on the axle. You'll feel that it is running nice and freely. Hold the pedal body and the axle and move that from side to side. You find that's nice and tight, even just with your fingers. I've not really put any kind of tension on that tool at all. Replace the washer onto the axle. Push that down a little bit with my spike so it's nice and neat. Now, the next thing to do, this is where your experience comes in. Have the 6mm Allen wrench and put that in the axle so you can hold it all nice and still. The new tool is designed so that the socket that removes the lock nut will go in the centre of it like so. Now, take the tool, the DMR V8 tool, and put it in over the cone nut that it's holding it. Take your socket with the nut still in it and slide that in. Now, if you just start that off so that you can feel it just nip in a minute. There we go. Just turn this the right way around. Okay, so now we've got the cone nut, the washer and the lock nut all back on after we've re-greased and replaced the bearings. That's just nipped with my fingers really loosely, but as you can see it's running freely and there's no play. The next bit's quite important, and it's why we designed this special tool, because to do it with any other tools is quite difficult. So if you put the DMR V8 tool back on to the cone nut. You take your 19mm Allen spanner, and put that onto the tool. Take your torque wrench with your 12mm bit. Now, I just make one note on this bit. It's very important that the outside diameter, the actual width of this bit, is no more than 17mm. You can get bits that are bigger in diameter but still 12mm for the nut. They won't fit. You need to make sure it's a 17mm. You can usually find that with a quarter drive bit. Put that down in there. Now, holding the spanner, 19mm spanner, still and tight, tighten the torque wrench up until its desired torque of about 7 Nm, like that. And what you've done is held the cone nut still and tightened the lock nut. If you weren't to hold the cone nut still and just tighten the lock nut, what you'd find is the cone nut would turn as well a little bit, and that would tighten the entire pedal so that it was stiff. Sometimes you wouldn't even be able to spin it. So you do need to hold the cone nut still, and this is what this special tool that we've designed is there to do. And now, as I've tightened up the lock nut against the cone nut without the cone nut moving, spinning freely, absolutely no play, really easy to do. From this point you can replace your old end cap if you want, if it was in good nick and you're happy with it, or get yourself a new one. Pop it on, it goes on with your fingers, like that. Clean your pedal up, bit of rag, old paper, squirt a bit of degreaser on it if you wish, get rid of anything that's crept out from the pedal. Repeat with the other pedal, put them onto your bike, you're done. As I said to begin with, it's a little bit more involved than the other pedals we do, and it takes a bit of a knack. If you invest in the V8 tool, it will really help you to service this pedal. I hope a lot of bike shops are going to have it in their toolbox, so if you need them to, give them a few quid and they'll do this for you. Well, I hope that's helpful. Anything you need to know, give us a ring at DMR Bikes, which is 01403 711 611, or drop me an email, which is technical@dmrbikes.com. And otherwise, I'll see you on the trail.